Hey everybody, welcome to my algebra tutorial on using parentheses. I'm going to do an econ example here because I'm an economist. I don't get caught up on that though. This is appropriate for anyone in any algebra course because I'm just going to give you a couple of equations you're going to solve for a variable. But for my students, what we're going to do is we're going to have a demand curve. We're going to have a demand curve, which is given as Q equals A minus BP. The quantity of a good that we demand is negatively related to the price of the good. And I'm going to have an inverse supply curve, which is given as P equals C plus DQ. Now, what we could do is we could notice that these equations are something different. One is a Q, one is a P. And I could invert one of them to make them be equal to the same thing. For the sake of showing you how to use parentheses, I'll get to use them a couple times in this example if I solve for Q by substituting it. So Q star is what I call the Q that makes these two things equal to each other. And so how am I going to do that? Well, I need to remember first and foremost that this P here is equal to C plus DQ. The intersection of these equations has this P equal to the P in the supply curve, which means it's equal to C plus DQ. So what's that going to look like? I'm going to say Q equals A minus B parenthesis C plus DQ, close parenthesis. Now, this thing is P. By doing this substitution, I find the point where these two equations are equal to each other. Get used to this. In econ, we do this kind of thing all the time. We're always finding where equations intersect with each other and finding solutions. And if you're ever going to do anything in the mathematical field, get used to this because your field does it too. Okay, so how do I deal with this parenthesis? What happens is that this negative B has to hit everything in the parenthesis equally. So the C is going to be multiplied by negative B, and the DQ will separately be multiplied by negative D. So Q is equal to A minus B times C minus B times DQ. All right, there, we've factored out our parenthesis. That's A minus BC minus B DQ. All right, parentheses are gone. Now let's solve for Q. I'm going to add BDQ to both sides. So I get BDQ plus Q equals all that stuff. And these terms cancel out. Okay, that's why we did it. Now let's use a parenthesis again. Why? Because I've got two Q's here with the same exponent. They're both power of 1, and I can combine them into one thing. So if I divide both of these terms, BDQ and Q, by Q, I can get what goes inside the parentheses, BD plus 1. So there I basically divided the left side by Q, and now I'm going to multiply it by Q. And so the value of it doesn't change. And that's equal to A minus BC. And then I can divide both sides by what is entirely within the parentheses. Q equals A minus BC over BD plus 1. And there's my Q star. So where were all the places where we had to use a parentheses? There was the initial substitution. There was later during our solving, and even if you want to think of it that way, right here for our division. just to solve for Q, which is one of the simplest things we do in econ, we had to use parentheses 3 different times. So I hope you get used to it, because you're going to need it. Anyway, hope this was helpful. If not, too bad. Thanks for watching, guys. Happy econing or whatever kind of math you're doing.